Thank you, Sandra. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here today. We have a small group, but I'm excited for that because we're going to actually do some work today. This is definitely not just a sit and listen. So prepare yourselves. So we're going to talk about something that's often overlooked, right, when we're caring for others, which is self-care for you. Sandra, this one's for you. You need it this week. So self-care for you, the caregiver. So, while we're caring for others, for our loved ones, which is incredibly important, it's also really equally vital that we take care of ourselves. And today, that is what we're going to explore. So, we're going to look into some different ways that you can make sure that you are caring for your own well being and that it remains a priority, which is often easier said than done, I know. Just to introduce myself, my name's Erin Moran. I have a background in special education, student services, educational technology, and behavior analysis. But one of my greatest passions and biggest honors is serving on the board of the Down Syndrome Association of Los Angeles with Sandra and the rest of the team. So over the past few years, I've worked with school districts to improve social, emotional, and mental health outcomes for students, their families, and also the educators. And more recently, I've shifted my focus to supporting state governments in increasing access to early education and expanding high quality services to ensure that all families have equitable opportunities. But in all of the work that I've done throughout the years, one topic that consistently arises whenever I'm having conversations with folks and that I always find myself coming back to both personally and professionally is self-care. So as I had said, as caregivers, we often dedicate all of our time and energy to others, right? I'm sure we can all agree. Sandra, you would agree. You serve others constantly. But the truth is, self-care, it's not a luxury, right? It's really necessary. It's essential if we were going to be able to provide the best care possible for our loved ones and also for ourselves. So by the end of today's session, whether you're here live or watching recording, I hope that you have a better understanding of what self-care really is, what it means to you. We're going to start with self-awareness, and we're going to leave with some actionable steps and a plan for you to take to improve your own well-being. So today is all about you. You get to just think about yourself. So we're going to engage in some hands-on activities so we can really assess our self-care habits and routines, and most importantly, the strengths that you already have. And then, of course, the areas for improvement. It's really important that we approach this with an open mind and without judgment of ourselves or, of course, others. This isn't a time to critique yourself. Rather, it's just an opportunity to reflect and have grace with yourself and have grace with me, of course. And we'll work together to create a plan that you're going to use to enhance your self-care habits. And I'm sure all of you do already have some self-care habits, even if you can't think of any right now. So to get started, all you're going to need is a piece of paper and something to write with. And I know you didn't have a heads up for that. So take a moment to find a piece of paper and something to write with. I think it's a good idea to grab something because a lot of what we'll do will be kind of writing down our thoughts, and it'll give you something to have after this session. So if you're grabbing something right now, no worries. We're not going to write until the next slide. You've got time, don't worry. So just remember that it's common to feel a little bit guilty when we take time for ourselves. Maybe even taking this hour this morning, you're kind of like, oh, I could be doing all these things. Did I pack the dishwasher? Did I turn it on right? We're always thinking about others. But if we aren't looking after ourselves, it becomes even harder to care for others. So this is really important. I want you to try to think of it like an oxygen mask. If you've ever been able to go on a plane, you've heard them say, you must put on your own oxygen mask before helping the person next to you or your children or your family. So we have to put on our own oxygen mask first. Now, I want you to reflect on this next slide. Take a moment and consider this question. What is self-care? So make sure you have a paper and something to write with, and then think about what it means to you personally. So this is very personal work. It's going to be different for everyone. So what activities or habits come to mind? Take a minute just to brainstorm. You can jot down your ideas, and then we're going to come back and we'll discuss if you'd like to. I'm going to play some nice smooth jazz, and I'll give you a minute to think about this and write down a few thoughts.
the music.
It's so good, isn't it? It's so good to have a little smooth jazz piano music on a Saturday morning. So I hope you had a second to think about that. Now, this meeting is being recorded, so if you don't feel comfortable sharing today, that's totally fine. But if you'd like to, and you'd like to share out loud with your voice, you're very welcome to. If you'd rather participate in the chat, that's great too, and I can read your answers out aloud, and I can keep your name anonymous. I'll share, my thoughts and feelings, and maybe Sandra will too. So I know for me, self-care is just the things that kind of bring me peace. And sometimes that's being busy. Sometimes it is getting my house really clean so I can enjoy my evening. Self care is different for everyone, right? But self care for me is also really focusing on my health because I know I have to be healthy in order to look after my family. I have a handful of children and other loved ones I look after. So that's what it is to me. Sandra, do you want to share?
Let's see.
You don't have to. No
No,
pressure.
I gotta tell you, I mean, I do certain things, but I think lately I've been learning a lot from my own daughter about self-care. And just a couple of weeks ago, she took us to a spa and we did the scrubbing, the massage, the hair, everything. And I was like, I had never done this in my life. I mean, the scrubbing, I think the tone of my skin kind of changed a little bit.
Yes. You look very glowing
I was
today.
like, but usually for me, sometimes even just spending time with friends and without my son.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's messed up to make it sound like that,
Oh, no, it's
but
not.
because we go on that cruise and it's a time when we don't have to look back and where's Larry.
Mhm.
So I do spend time with my friends. I have a good friend in San Diego, and sometimes I go spend a weekend with her, and we just hang out, talk, and hang out,
I
shop or
love that.
something. And so that just I think talking to people, I feel like it helps me a lot.
Mhm.
Um, and I do other things like, doing my nails, my hair or something. But I feel like talking to other people, my friends, I think that's without any interruptions or.
Mhm.
So I feel
Sounds
like
like
that's some type of self-care.
it is. And we're going to actually explore 4 areas of self-care. And it sounds like your self-care, a lot of it is very social. Like you provide yourself self-care by surrounding yourself with loved ones and people to talk to. And it's not terrible. It's okay to want to take a break from Larry and the rest of the
Yeah.
family. That's not terrible at all. But thank you for sharing, Sandra. We have in the chat taking time that is solely for me, craving time to just go out for a walk alone. Yes, it can just be the simple little things, can't it? Thank you for sharing. If anyone else would like to share, please feel free to unmute at any time. This is a small group.
I just did making sure that I am happy, taking
Yeah.
care of myself, and then making sure I'm healthy, like you said, because if you're not healthy, I mean, when I was down after my surgery, it was really so
Mhm.
humbling to realize what I could and couldn't do. And I really realized I had to keep my health up, that was important. And I relied on so many other people to take care of, to make sure Kaylee was getting where she needed to be, and it was very humbling. And then I think just taking time for myself, I think we forget because we go to work, then we pick
Mhm.
them up, and then we're never really just by ourselves. So I'm really trying. My daughter taught Annalie, go out for a walk, just walk 30 minutes a day. That's what I've been trying to do is just get out and walk for 30 minutes and
Oh, I
just,
love that.
and it seems to be helping in a lot of areas. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just that 30 minutes is just walking.
Yeah. It's
I'm
good
not,
for your body and your
yeah,
mind.
I'm not a runner. I'll never be a runner, but just to get out and walk, it's just, that's my time. So,
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
I love that. We have some like self-care champions in this room already. Fantastic. Well, you've already got one amazing action plan, so hopefully we'll be able to build another in for you. Anyone else? I'm going to keep going just for the sake of time. We have so much to get through today. But if anyone wants to unmute at any time and share or pop something in the chat, please go ahead. This is your time. This is for you. Um, So moving along, self-care might sound like a buzzword, right? We do hear it a lot. And I think that I hear it a lot in commercials and advertisements, which kind of makes me feel like I'm being manipulated. I think that's not I don't want to buy that. That's not self-care for me. But it's actually really important, right? And as you just heard, everyone has different ways that they take care of themselves. And it's really just anything that helps you maintain your health, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental. So we're going to look into these different buckets today together. So it's all about just taking those intentional steps, as you just heard, right, from our friends. They all have kind of a couple of steps that they like to take, maybe even just one thing that they're doing, which is usually more than one thing when we really think about it on the grand scheme. But it's just to support your overall well-being. I want you to remember that self-care is going to be unique to each person, and it's highly cultural as well, right? I'm from Australia. If you were to tell me to go and sit alone in a room and not talk to anyone, that's actually torture for me. I need to be around people. I need to talk and have fun and laugh and tell jokes. And what works for someone else might not be what works for you. So this is very personal work. If you just heard anyone share anything that you were like, oh, yes, no, that wouldn't be good for me, that's awesome. Just reflect on it, right? Like I just said, what self-care for me might not be the same as what it is for Sandra, although we're good friends, so it probably is. And maybe you just heard a few ideas that have got you thinking about what you could do for yourself. So we are next going to start our work. So if you've joined us late, I need you to grab a piece of paper and a pen because we're going to do some work. This is definitely not just a sit and listen. It's a lot of reflection and planning. So this is going to be a guided reflection in the next few slides where we jump into the different areas of self-care so we can really identify where we're going to work on ourselves. But first, before we go through a really guided reflection, let's just collect some basic information on ourselves, right? So we can kind of work out what will be helpful later when we're planning some new self-care strategies. So we're going to pause for a moment. I'm going to put that smooth jazz back on. And I'd love for you to reflect on these 3 questions. If you would like to write down your answers, please go ahead. You'll have something to take with you. And if not, that's okay too. So the questions are, how would you rate your current self-care on a scale of 1 to 10? What strategies do you currently use for self-care? And you can just write down some keywords, or you could say, I don't think I'm doing anything right now. And then if you have any obstacles that you feel might be preventing you from practicing self-care regularly. We're going to dive deeper into these. These are just kind of our baseline, gathering a little bit of information, and then we'll expand. So I'm going to pop the smooth jazz on, November jazz, and I'll give you a minute. Oh, it's an abrupt pause. I find it very easy to think about the obstacles because they're kind of my scapegoats for why I don't take care of myself. But these reflections are really important because they're going to help us understand where we are right now and how we can move forward. I'm going to skip to the next slide and we will share out afterwards. So thank you for taking a little moment to answer those questions. We're going to consider that our informal evaluation, and we'll use your responses to help create our action plan moving forward. So now we're really going to expand on those responses to create our action plan. Okay, so we're going to break self-care into 4 key areas. And you might have heard when myself and my friends were sharing that we all had kind of different things that we're doing, right? And if you can actually plot those different things into these 4 areas. So by breaking this down, it's going to better allow us to identify where we can grow. And it'll also, and most importantly, give us a chance to recognize and celebrate our areas of strength, because we can often use our areas of strength to support our areas of growth, right? So remember, we're having grace with ourselves, kindness. This is not a time to judge ourselves. This is a time for us to support ourselves. So those 4 areas are physical self-care, that might be walking. Emotional self-care might be journaling, meditating, talking to friends. Mental self-care, that might be talking to a therapist, right? Or having a support group, lots of different things. Social self-care, going out with friends and family, going to a support group, right? So many different things that can fall into these buckets. We're now going to rate ourselves in each of these areas to pinpoint where we're doing really well and also where there's room for improvement. So to prepare for these questions, you can see on the right side of the screen right now that I have kind of written it up, right? So I'd love if you have that piece of paper to prepare to go ahead and copy that worksheet you see on the right-hand side of the screen, so you'll be able to really quickly and easily fill in the answers. So you don't have to write the title if you don't want to, but if you could write the 4 areas, physical, emotional, mental, and social, and then leave yourself 4 spaces, because you'll have 4 questions to answer, and you're just going to put a number there. You don't have to write a long sentence, and then we will tally them up. We'll have a total. While you're writing that down, I'm just going to see if I can change my view so I can see you all. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Oh, I need some smooth jazz on this screen as well. Sandra, do you want to sing with me? And if you don't have time to write all of this down, it's actually going to be on the next few slides. So don't worry, there'll be some little reminders. I'm going to skip to the next slide, and you'll have that same template that you can continue copying. I also have my directions. So this is going to be a self-care rating questionnaire, and it's designed to help you assess your current self-care practices in those 4 areas. So here's how it's going to work. For each statement, which are on the next slides, don't worry, you're not supposed to know what they are yet, you're going to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being never and 5 being always. And I have this on the bottom of each slide as a reminder, so don't worry, you don't need to remember that. You're then going to write your response on the worksheet in front of you. So if you look at my little worksheet up there in the corner, you can see I've added some numbers and then my total. Don't copy those numbers. I mean, if we end up with the same numbers, that's interesting. But I actually didn't. These weren't my true answers. I just put random numbers. And at the end, we're going to total our scores for each area to identify your strengths, right? Most importantly, and then which areas we might need to pay more attention to. And this is going to give us that valuable insight to help us guide our action plan, which we'll do afterwards. So take time with this. It's important to be really honest with yourself. And remember, this is a judgment-free process, right? So we're not judging ourselves. The goal is just to reflect and identify where we might have to grow and how we can support ourselves. So first, we are going to reflect on our physical self-care and our emotional self-care. So down the bottom, I have the 1 equals never, 2 equals not often, 3 equals often, 4 is most of the time, and 5 is always. And you might give yourself mostly 1s or 2s, or maybe a lot of 3s, or maybe all 5s, and it's okay. This is judgment-free, remember. So let's start with physical health, and you'll simply write a number next to each of those bullet points. So the first statement, which you're going to choose a number for yourself, is I eat nutritious meals and stay hydrated. So do you never do that? Do you often? Not often? Always, most of the time? Next is I get enough rest and sleep. Whatever that means to you. Everyone's different with how much they sleep.
Can you say it again?
Yeah, I get enough. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't press the button so you could see them. I'm so
Okay, I
sorry.
was like, oh.
Yeah, you actually don't have to.
You're
listening to me.
muted, Coralie. You're muted. I get enough rest and sleep.
So I eat nutritious meals and stay hydrated. I get enough rest and sleep. I engage in regular physical activity, whatever that means to you, right? It might be 5 minutes of walking a day. It might be 30, it could be an hour, whatever that means to you. I rest when I'm feeling physically tired.
I guess I'll do.
And then moving on to your emotional self-care, I express my feelings in healthy ways. Whatever that means to you, my healthy way may not be your healthy way. We'd have to ask my family. I engage in activities that bring me joy. I seek support when emotionally overwhelmed. I allow myself to process difficult emotions. I'll just give you a moment to make sure you've got all of those. Sandra, you let me know when you've got all of those. That can be our gauge.
I'm thinking the last one.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I want to make sure everyone has time.
Okay.
Let's see, can I see anyone else? We only have one more slide with the other two areas. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. If anyone needs me to move back, please pop it in the chat. So the next two areas are mental self-care and social self-care. So we have, I set boundaries to protect my energy. I engage in mentally stimulating activities, whatever that is to you. My daughter likes to do the Wordle from the New York Times every day. Maybe I like to scroll Instagram, whatever that means to you. I say no when I feel overextended. That's an important one. I take breaks for mental well-being. And then our social self-care, I spend time with loved ones regularly. And if you're a caregiver and you love your loved ones, then likely you do that all the time. Might not be my choice. I ask for help when I need it. I feel connected to a support group. If you're friends with Sandra, I can guarantee you're feeling connected to her and her support. I nurture important relationships.
Right.
You're good. All right. Okay. Move on to the next page. You're good?
Yes.
If anyone needs me to go backwards or to reflect on a question you missed, you just pop it in the chat or unmute. So then we are going to tally it up. So you're going to total your score for each of those areas. And I'm going to show you a bit of a rubric. Now remember, this is judgment-free zone. We're just finding out what our areas of strength and growth are. This is not a critique. So if in any of those areas you scored yourself from 15 to 20 points, great job. That's probably an area of strength, right? You're really prioritizing your self-care, or that's an area where you have some really great habits and routines set up. For 10 to 15, you're doing well, but there's always room for improvement, right? Maybe you'll decide to create a goal today, which is going to improve that area. For 5 to 10, we might want to consider making more time for self-care in this area, if it's important to you. For some people, you'll be like, I'm such an introvert and I don't really like leaving my house. The social self-care is not really my jam. That's okay. This is going to be different for everyone. And below 5 points, we're going to say, okay, this is time to focus on your well-being, especially if this is your physical health, right? Because that's so crucial to being able to look after others. So remember, this is not a one-time event, your self-care, right? It's an ongoing practice, and it's going to constantly change, right? Both for yourself and for the ones that you care about. But we want to try to create some consistency. So take a second based on those results to just think about which of your areas are your strengths. And that might be what you scored within 5 to 10 of, right? We might consider those your areas of strength. This is a sliding scale. Your strengths don't have to be up there, above 10 points. And then what is your area of growth? And this might be based on those points, or it might just be what you know in your heart. It's going to be really important for you moving forward to look after yourself and others. I'll give you a second. This can be a hard one. I don't like doing self-rating scales.
I wasn't ready to do math today, but okay.
We're only counting to 20.
This is stressing me out.
You can get out your calculator as well. You can just go with what's in your gut too. It doesn't have to be based on these numbers. Okay, how much time do we have? Well, we're in a pretty good place time-wise because we're going to come up with a goal. So if you'd like to go ahead and write down your areas of strength and growth, you may. If you want to have that written down on your paper. And like I said, that doesn't mean that they were above 10 points, right? You might just know which ones you're stronger in. That was just, something for us to reflect on. And now that we've identified some areas of strength and growth, we're going to start planning, and we're going to decide on what some practical self-care strategies are for us that are really easy to implement. So we are not coming up with a grand, elaborate scheme of how we will go on a Hawaiian vacation today, although we might plan some small steps to get there. And the good news is that all of these little steps we're going to plan, they can be really small. They can be small steps. They don't have to take hours, but it can make a really big impact still. So a short walk, right, even a few minutes a day, a couple of minutes of meditating or listening to music, maybe reaching out to someone, can make such a difference. So it's just about finding what's going to work for you and then making it a priority. And the fact that you're here today already says that you're making it a priority. So before we dive into creating that action plan, I want to acknowledge something very, very important. I know that this is a very special group of people in this webinar today, and that many of you have a lot of extra responsibilities as you're caring for someone with Down syndrome. And I don't want to disregard that, right? This isn't just a regular kind of self-care talk. And at the same time, I also don't want that to become an excuse for you not giving yourself the love and care and attention that you really deserve and that you need. Because it's really easy to fall into the trap of putting others first, right? I know Sandra serves such a large community as well as her family and her loved ones. She puts a lot of people first, right? It's really easy to fall into that trap and not think about ourselves, especially when we're in that caregiving role. And we have all these other things as well, right? Many of us work, we're family members, we're community members. So I want you to really just remind yourself that self-care is not selfish, it's just essential. And caring for yourself is going to allow you to be more present and effective in caring for others. Oh, I keep not clicking my button and getting all my words up. I'm sorry. All right. So let's have a look at the challenges of practicing self-care as caregivers. So we really face some unique challenges when it comes to self-care, and it's really important to acknowledge these hurdles. So earlier, the first time you wrote anything down, you might have written down what you feel like some of those common barriers are for you. And some of them may have been in the area of time constraints, right? Caregiving responsibilities are often 24/7, and the demands can leave you with very little time for anything else, let alone taking care of yourself, right? When you're constantly focused on other people, their schedules, it can feel almost impossible. And then we have guilt, right? Many of us caregivers, we really struggle with feeling selfish when we focus on ourselves. It can be hard to step away, and it can lead to a deep sense of guilt when we take time away for ourselves, right? Maybe even this morning, this is hard. Then a lack of support, and I know that you're a part of the DSALA community, so I hope that you do have support and know that we're always here for you. But limited access to respite care or help can kind of put us in a tricky situation where we don't have enough time, or we feel like we don't have enough time, or the resources to reach out to people. And then finally, physical and emotional exhaustion. So just having no energy left, right? Just feeling like, oh, how can I do anything else? But that's a time where we can say, how can my self-care reinvigorate that, right? Or be a time to take a break, or be taking a nap, something like that, right? We can really work with it, make sure that we come up with some activities that could just be nourishing your body, your mind, and your spirit, including sleeping, prioritizing sleep. So these changes are very, very real, especially for our community, and it can be very difficult to prioritize yourself. But we're here to help you, and today you're going to come up with even just one small way that you're going to do this and balance those caregiving responsibilities. And research supports this, okay? Research highlights that a crucial role of self-care plays into caregivers' overall well-being. Studies show that caregivers who engage in regular self-care activities report they have lower levels of burnout. So they're making a bit of time for themselves. They're experiencing less emotional and physical exhaustion. They have better physical health. So engaging in self-care is highly associated with improved health outcomes, including better sleep, lower stress. We know what all of those things do to us, right? If we're not sleeping and we're stressed out, it's not good for our bodies and our immune function. And increased emotional resilience. So self-care helps caregivers build greater emotional resilience, allowing them to cope with the stresses and the challenges that do come up, especially when caring for a loved one who has Down syndrome. So in fact, research is indicating that caregivers who prioritize self-care are not only healthier, but more equipped to handle the emotional demands of caregiving. So if you need a soapbox to stand on and to tell people, hey, I need to take a break, I need to do my self-care routine, you tell them there's research behind it. And as we've discussed, self-care is really critical for all caregivers, but especially there are some special considerations for those who are caring for individuals with Down syndrome. So let's just take a moment to validate and highlight these, right? So often in your households, you're dealing with extra health concerns for your family member. You're also concerned perhaps about longevity of care. So caregiving role often extends well into adulthood for individuals with Down syndrome. So this means that caregivers such as yourselves are often thinking about the future, right? It's not just, oh, when my child turns 18 and goes off to college. You have different considerations to take into account. That's very valid, and it can make it much harder to prioritize self-care. But a protective factor, and you're here today, so I know that you hopefully feel supported, is having community support, having access to community resources. It can make a really big difference. Being able to go on that cruise, like Sandra was saying, right? It's really essential to connect with others who understand your unique challenges. Organizations like DSALA provide really invaluable support for caregivers, and they also teach you how to advocate not only for the individual that you care for, but also your own needs as well, right? By offering those extra activities like Sandra organizes, because she is such an incredible human being. So just want to keep in mind these special considerations, and just remember that caregiving is not only about meeting the needs of your loved one, but it's also about sustaining yourself in the process, because it can be a lifelong journey. Oh, I didn't click it again. I have all these words on the screen. I'm so sorry. Sandra, you have to give me a poke if you're like, Erin, your screen is empty. So here they are, written as well, but I'm glad I got to read them to you. All right, make sure I've done all my clicks. There we go. So before we start planning, and I know this is a long time in the making, and I'll try to be quick because we don't have a lot of time left, we really have to consider how this connects with self-awareness. So that's the foundation of self-care, right? It's the ability to recognize and understand your own needs, emotional, the stresses. And for caregivers, this can be challenging because we're so focused on others. So that's our social awareness, right? This is a time for self-awareness. So this is engaging in our own selves. And we've already been doing this by that reflection, considering what you think self-care is, that assessment. You are engaging in self-awareness right now. Get all my clicks in. And now we're going to explore a few extra ways to build self-awareness. So one of the most powerful tools is just reflection, right? So reflecting, which is what we're doing today together. It can be done on your own or with others. And it's a very intentional practice, and it helps us process our emotions, recognize patterns in our behavior, and better understand what we need. So today we are going to come up with an action plan, right? A goal of how to increase our self-care. But just remember that you might need to continue doing this. And by reflecting, you can do this on your own as you go. You might want to keep a journal, or even that piece of paper you're in front of you right now, maybe hang on to it, and you can keep kind of jotting down on the back as your feelings and your thoughts and your needs for self-care change. It can lead to really profound insight. So let's just do a really quick exercise together right now. I'd like you to just pause for a second. Oh, there we go. It's already up. Pause for a second and just identify one emotion that you're feeling right now. Just take note of it. You can jot it down. Don't need to try to fix it or change it. Just simply acknowledge it, whatever it may be. Just as easy as that. You can do this when you're feeling overwhelmed too, and you're like, oh, I need to come up with a new self-care strategy. And then earlier we identified some of the common barriers for self-care, such as guilt, lack of time, and energy. And those are really valid feelings, right? And it's important to acknowledge them. But I want to stress this, taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's essential. So today I encourage you to acknowledge these barriers, whatever they may be for you, without judgment. And it's okay to feel them. It's not a bad thing, right? It doesn't mean you don't love your family. but you don't want to let them stop you from making self-care a priority. So if you'd like to, feel free to write down some of the barriers that you're facing right now. Writing them down can help them make them a little bit more tangible and give you a chance to visualize them, making it easier to think about how you might overcome them. So I'll play a little bit of smooth November jazz, and if you'd like to write down what you feel some of your barriers are right now, go ahead, and then we're going to come up with our action plan. Thank you so much for those of you who have done that. If you haven't finished, please just continue, go ahead. So we're going to talk about creating a routine, because self-care is most effective when it becomes a part of our routine, right? Like we were sharing earlier, those of us who it's like we do it every day or we have a certain time that we do it, right? Building it into our daily or weekly schedules, it's going to ensure that it actually happens. So we're going to start small, maybe a 5-minute mindfulness exercise or a walk, right? Quick stretch before bed. The key is going to be consistency. Self-care should be something you do regularly, not just when you're completely drained, right? It shouldn't be your emergency plan. And now we're going to make our plan. So the great news is self-care doesn't have to take hours. It's going to be a really small step in the beginning. Short walk, a few minutes of meditation, reaching out to someone, making a phone call. They can all be highly effective practices. Some of you may have seen SMART goals before. If you haven't, don't be scared. It's not complicated and we'll walk through it together. So to help you stay committed to your self-care plan, we're going to set a SMART goal, which can be incredibly helpful. I recommend using SMART goals, this framework, because it will make sure that you have enough information and detail to be able to be really practical and applicable. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So this approach is going to help you create clear, manageable goals that are much easier to track and achieve. I love data. I'm an analyst, right? So for example, instead of setting a vague goal like, I'm going to take better care of myself. I mean, we've all said it. We're going to try something more specific like, I will take a 10-minute walk every day after dinner for the next 2 weeks. By being specific, you're making your goal very clear and actionable. And we'll have a much better chance of achieving our goal if we make sure that they are SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Don't need to memorize that or write it down, but you're welcome to. I'm going to have it on the following slides. So let's walk through an example of a SMART goal, and we'll see how it works in action. So I will take a 10-minute walk every day after dinner for the next 2 weeks. Let's break it down. Is it specific? Yes, it's clear. I'm committing to a 10-minute walk. Is it measurable? Let me get all these slides up. Too far. Is it measurable? Yes, you'll know if you did it or not, right? There's no ambiguity. Nope, I'm not even going to try again with that one, but you know where I'm going. Is it achievable? Yes, 10 minutes isn't overwhelming, right? It's not too much time. It's not super consuming. Something I could fit into my day. Is it relevant? Yeah, exercise is beneficial, right? Both for you, your mental and physical health. This goal is aligned with your well-being. If you can't walk right, if you have any kind of disability, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's I'll sit outside and watch the birds. We're going to come up with our own goal. Is it time-bound? Yes, we've set a time frame, 2 weeks. So we'll have a clear deadline and we'll be able to assess and then reassess. Now, you'll see I have a second example here of reading. So it's 45 minutes. I'm going to do it before bed, Monday through Friday. I'm going to do it for 5 days and see how I go. And now next, you'll get to have your turn. I'll put our November jazz back on. I want you to take a moment and think about a self-care goal that you can set for yourself. Remember, it doesn't have to be big. It can be something realistic and manageable. You might want to consider your areas of strength and growth, Maybe you want to focus on your strengths and just ham up your skills, right? Come up with a goal, a SMART goal that is one of your strengths. Or maybe you want to dive into one of your growth areas. So I have a little example here on the screen of how that can look. So I will watch my favorite show, 30 minutes each night after dinner, Monday through Friday. But I want you to come up with your own SMART goal. This is going to be your takeaway from today. I'll put on the smooth jazz. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat or unmute. I'm happy to talk about it, but this is free. Whatever works for you. Free time. Sandra, you let me know when you're done so that I can gauge how everyone's doing.
I'm done.
She's done, everybody. And the good thing is, if you're not done, don't worry. You have your piece of paper, so you'll be able to work on this whenever it comes to mind. Maybe right now you're completely stumped. You're like, I don't know. I don't want to think about this right now. You can think about it later. You can think about it tomorrow. There's no rush. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. So here are some tips for sticking to your self-care goal. We want to track our progress. So whether it's through an app, a journal, or simply checking off a box on your calendar, right? We really want to track it because it's going to help us stay focused and motivated. Finding an accountability partner can be very helpful. Partnering up with someone can provide encouragement, help you stay consistent. It could be a friend, a family member, or even someone you meet through a support group. They don't also have to be doing the goal, right, or have a goal, but you could just say, this is what I'm doing, and then the next time you talk, maybe they'll check in with you, or you could say, could you check in with me? You could set a reminder for yourself, right? I want you to be flexible. So life happens, and you may need to adjust your goals along the way. That's okay, right? Your loved one needs to go to the doctor and you can't go for your walk. That's okay. You don't need to ding yourself for that. The important thing is that you stay committed to your self-care, even when things don't go exactly as planned. And remember that consistency is key, not perfection. So stay flexible, stay motivated, and keep making yourself a priority. So before we wrap up, I want to make sure that you take a moment to reflect on one self-care action that you can commit to, hopefully today. Doesn't have to be big, right? It can be small. Maybe it's setting aside just 5 minutes each day for yourself, or finally scheduling that doctor's appointment to take care of your physical or your mental health. The key is just to start small, but to start today. This isn't something that has to wait till tomorrow or the next month, right? It's not our New Year's resolution. It's not something we want to put off. Once you've decided, you can write it down on your piece of paper. You can keep it somewhere visible if you like. Put it on the fridge or next to your bed. Maybe it's on your phone, in your calendar, or in your notes. Keep your commitment in front of you. It'll help ensure that you follow through. And continue to remember that self-care is not just for you. It is going to allow you to be the best caregiver that you can be for others. So if you're feeling like it's selfish, it's not. It's self-preservation. Need my smooth jazz. Yeah, you got one, Sandra? You got something you're gonna do for yourself?
Oh no, I was saying I really like this.
Oh, the quote.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Miss Lord is amazing. If you've ever read her books, she's incredible. She's full of wisdom.
I'm copying it, but
yes, go for it. I'll leave it up.
Let's see if maybe I can post it somewhere in my house.
Yes, perfect. That could be what you put on your fridge as your reminder, right? I don't know. Everything goes on my fridge. I like to snack. And then finally, we're finishing up early, which is good. Our last reflection, and you could write this down or just keep it in your mind. As we come to a close, let's name a takeaway for the heart. So one thing that you connected with today, one thing for the head. So what was one new thing that you learned? And then for your feet. So what's one thing that you will try? And I hope that that's your self-care goal or your commitment for the day. I think that this is a good way to reflect. My last team at work came up with this reflection and commitment, and I just love it. Maybe you only have 2 out of the 3 or 1 out of the 3. That's okay. You writing it down, Sandra?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You're a busy worker today. I appreciate you all joining today. I don't know if you knew you were coming to an active work session, but I like people to be able to walk away with something in their hands and something to think about and maybe talk about with a friend, maybe share with a friend. So I hope that this has been a good use of your Saturday morning. And I hope that it leads to an increase in your self-care routine and practices. And you can always share this knowledge too, or encourage your loved ones to also increase their self-care routine and practices. Sandra, thank you so much for inviting me today. It is an absolute honor to be here.
Thank you. I think, well, one of the things I wanted to share that
Please.
come into this group, I feel like because we're all moms, our kids, I think we already connected with an, all like we have that connection, so that's,
Absolutely.
with the other moms here today. Because sometimes we do feel overwhelmed, but when we come together, I feel like uh, at least being understood, I think it will help, because I
Yeah.
have a lot of family members. We have a large family, but this is my second family, the Down syndrome community,
Mhm.
because in my family, nobody understands, like even have a clue of how, I think on the outside, we make things look easy and people don't know all the struggles that we go through, even just scheduling our kids' days and transportation or getting caregivers for this, for that, or we have to be the caregivers. But I feel like because of our kids, we have learned to cope with a lot of that stuff. And on the outside, we make it look easy to other people not in our community. Anyway, I just
Mhm.
wanted to share that because I feel sometimes like even my own family, they take a lot of things for granted. And sometimes they ask me to do things for them because they feel like, oh, since you're so good at them doing all this, I'm like, stay away from me. I have no time. But
I'm full, full capacity.
and I
Yeah,
don't
this is a group with a lot of resilience and grit,
know.
right? That's for sure. They've got that. We don't need a workshop on resilience and grit. No.
So anyway, but yeah, so I'm very grateful that I have all these moms in my life. Because yeah, nobody else, like I say, especially even within my family, there's no like real understanding. Possibly my mom, like I think my mom probably knows best, but other than that, I just don't see anybody else in the family really knowing the our walk, our journey every day, you know. Yeah, so nothing. I'm sorry. I just want to, I know I can ramble off it.
But it's very true, Sandra. It's an everyday thing. I just went to visit my family who all lives in Salt Lake. And my brother goes, well, I don't understand why you just can't bring your computer and just work from here. And I'm thinking, well, what do I do with Kaylee? I mean, hello, who's going to, Annalie works, my husband works. I mean, who's going to get her where, they just don't, they can't fathom, I think, what we go through every day just to keep up with the daily things.
Right.
So I'm with you on that, Sandra. And I want to give you a big thank for all that you do. And I love the Down Syndrome Association, but thank you so much for all the time that you do, really. And thank you, Erin. It was great.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed the workshop very much. So thank
Lovely
you.
to meet you. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for doing this.
You're
It gives me
welcome.
a lot of stuff to think about,
I'm
And
glad.
and some things that I've been like, I think I've known that I needed to do certain things, and now I feel like I really know for sure. Because like my lowest scores, I think it was in the area of oh my gosh, I lost my notes now. Emotional.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I know that I have done a couple of sessions with a therapist, and I've been thinking I really need to go back. I really need to go
Mhm.
back. And now with my low scores in that area, I feel like I really need to go back. Like I
It's
really need to make
validated.
it a priority. But anyway,
Yeah.
I just wanted to share that too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I mean, it's very vulnerable, but I'm sure many of the folks in this room feel the same way. So thank you for sharing, for your candid vulnerability. We have in the chat, thank you. I learned something new today about self care. Great topic for us all to know. Yes, we agree. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much, and Erin, thank you for taking your
You're welcome.
morning away from your family to spend it with us.
It's my pleasure. I am going to jump off. I need to drive some people some places, as we all do.
Yeah.
But it's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone else for spending your morning with us. And if you don't mind, Erin, can we get, oh, she really jumped off. I'm gonna try to get the presentation and send it off to you guys. All right. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.